I am delighted to welcome all of you. This is our greatest number of participants, which is very exciting, to our increasing rigor across adult education instruction. This is, as Mary Louise said and as Blair pointed out, this is our pre-webinar, and we'll be meeting face-to-face next Monday. I'm really looking forward to that, but this is a great way for us to connect in real time, virtually, and also look at some of the main principles that will underlie our work together next Monday. So in terms of why are we here, these are the four goals that we have for today: to connect in real time, as I mentioned, to identify our different contexts and needs, because we are coming from all over in terms of locations, but also in many cases in terms of the context that we're teaching in. So we want to be aware of each other's differences. The diversity is wonderful. Catherine cannot hear anything, so Blair, I know, will help you with that. We're going to launch our exploration of rigorous instruction, and this is really key. So for those of you who have missed the webinar and are listening to the recording even as I speak, it's great that you're spending the time, because this will actually inform a lot of the active learning that we do next Monday. And then, of course, just as a little appetizer, we'll preview the agenda and materials for our work together next Monday. Any good instruction starts with some kind of needs assessment, finding out about the people who are in front of you or facing computers. Let's see, I'm hearing that I'm fading in and out, so I'm going to make my microphone go up a little bit. Remember that you too can adjust your speaker volume by going up to the little sound icon, not the microphone icon, but the sound icon at the top of your screen, and you can adjust my volume there because there are differences in speakers. So what we're doing right now is finding out what your goals are, and you can click as many as you need. Are you an ESL teacher, an ABE teacher, an ASE, HiSET, coordinator, administrator? And Catherine, the number is above the, if you look up above your first question, Blair's number is up there. It's 916-286-8812. I know I said that quickly, but it's right above, and I'm giving everybody time to look. We have a lot more people on this list than we have respondents right now. So I'm counting 6, 8, 10, 15, 16, and I know we have over 20 respondents. So please, everybody respond to the poll that you see up here right now. Okay, Corinne, that's great to know. I'll type the number in again. Sure, it is actually up there, 916-286-88. I see your point, though, Deborah. There we go. Okay, so looking at this, what do you see? What can you infer from the results of this poll? You should all be able to see what you've said. You should be able to pick more than one option. I'm sure that that's a possibility. Is supposed to be. Multiple answers. Okay, let's try it again. So one more time. You can pick as many as you like. It was set it the wrong way. That's probably why you were a little frustrated. I apologize. But isn't technology wonderful? Bing, we changed it. Okay, so now we have 11, 15, 19. Great. We have plenty of responses. So looking at this poll, what kinds of statements can you make about our group? I'll take 3 statements in the chat pod. First 3. Matt. Pretty even distribution. Donna, we're diverse. What adult group is not? And I see that Kristen and Victoria and Tammy are writing. Okay, teacher advisor. Right, but you need to, Victoria, what you do is you would click on the poll itself. And Tammy, you click on the poll itself to indicate that. So you just click on the square. Let's try another poll. We're doing well. We've got the fact that there's a slight majority for ESL. Yes. Good precise language, not a majority, but a slight majority. Actually, and administrators and ESL teachers are head-to-head. Because we have 8 administrators, 8 ESL teachers. Terrific. This is a perfect example of your having to use a lot of critical thinking about looking at gathering data and making statements. This is not a hardship for you, but for many of our learners, it would be a challenge. So this is something to be aware of. This is something as simple as taking a poll, collecting the data, and analyzing and discussing the data is a great way to increase rigor. Let's look at another one. Tell me about the learners in your class. I'm hoping this one is also giving you the option to have multiple answers, but I won't look at that to find out if that's not true right now. I'm hoping you can. Let me see. Let me edit. Yes, you can. Multiple. No, now you can. Go ahead. Try it again. Thank you, Deborah. So what you're seeing is that even with the ESL teachers, we have fewer that are not at all proficient in English of the ESL learners. We have, oh, it looks like we're moving up on that one, but we have somewhat proficient in English. And we have 5 with native speakers. This lets you know that the materials that we look at, oh, wow, that's very interesting. This lets you know that the material that we look at together on the 5th, we have to be aware that we can't just target English language learners with the material that we're using, because that would leave out the teachers of these native speakers of English. So this is another reason why we need to look at needs assessments, to be really clear on who we're teaching and with whom we're working. Okay, I'm going to hide this poll, and we have one last one. Let me make sure before we start if this is multiple answers. Okay. With which of these are you most familiar? And you can have multiple answers because you could be most familiar with more than one. But if there's only one that you're really familiar with, just mark that one. Anybody have an idea why I would ask this question? Deborah's writing. Victoria's writing. Multiple people. Victoria's saying to see what I should cover? Absolutely. To get a little better sense to focus my instruction? Lovely. Anything else? Gauging how much orientation we have towards workforce. That certainly is something that would be covered through, or could be covered through this. James, I'm not sure about the teacher advisor point, but maybe it was just something you wanted to add in there. Well, Donna, frankly, just between the two of us, the material is planned. But it's planned so that if people have varying awareness and familiarity with this material, we can scaffold for those who don't have a lot of background, and we can challenge for those who do. No reason to apologize. It's fine. Yes, so Juan really has it in a nutshell, identifying prior knowledge. That's really the focus of this, because as we go through today talking about the principles behind increasing rigor, these different terms and products are all, and grants are all part of the rationale for increasing rigor. Now I'm going to ask you to find a little piece of paper somewhere. Yes, Neela, that's true. If you want to develop curriculum focused on learners' needs, absolutely. I'm going to ask you to, we're not going to give the answers now, but I want you to do a little pre-test for yourself. And you can just keep this in your mind, or you can just jot it down on a Post-it or a piece of paper. We're going to go through a few true-false questions, statements, and I would like you to think what the answers are. Don't write them in the chat pod. I don't want to cue anyone's thinking. So at this point, you'll answer the questions for yourselves, and then we'll address these questions when we see each other on Monday. So my first statement is, academic skills are important for career training, true or false? Don't type in the chat pod. Oh, Martina. Don't type in the chat pod. True or false? WIOA requirements include rigorous instruction. So this would fall under those of you that are familiar with WIOA. You might know whether this is true or false. Don't type in the chat pod. Don't type in the chat pod. If you're typing in the chat pod, don't type it. You're just writing these answers for yourself. True or false? More work plus homework equals rigor. What do you think? Don't type. This is the equivalent of when you ask the question in the classroom and you say, I just want you to think about it. And then you always have, people are very anxious to share what they know. So they raise their hands and you say, true or false, providing instructional support, also called scaffolding, means a diminution of rigor. In other words, when we support or scaffold what we're doing in the classroom, we're diminishing rigor. Is that true or false? True or false, adult English language learners can meet challenging academic standards. And last, true or false, increasing rigor means having high expectations of learners. Okay, so you've got your own take on these questions, and now we're going to take a moment and think about our own learners and their needs and skills, and then go forward with a little bit more information on rigor. The first thing I want you to think about is your learner's goals. And you can see right below this image, there is a chat window similar to the one you see on the right that you've been writing in, but this one is a little broader, and we'll be able to see everyone's answers, hopefully, or start scrolling. We have a lot of people in our group today, so we may have to scroll. Would you please start brainstorming? I'm going to put the music on. So you'll have 90 seconds to brainstorm your learner's goals. You may type in as many times as you like. If the music is too loud for you, all you need to do is adjust the volume. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little scrub bar, and you can move the music. You can move it to quiet it down. I'm going to put mine down pretty quiet. 90 seconds on the clock. So you can, I said time before it was actually time, but it was time on the music. If you go up to the top, you can move the, oh my goodness, not a scrub bar, I can't think what it's called, the scroll bar. You can move the tab and the scroll bar up and down to see what everyone has written. And as you move up and down, you'll notice that the goals really fall into some pretty specific categories. We've got a lot of workplace goals. We've got a lot of self-esteem, self-confidence goals. We have integration and citizenship, community engagement goals. We have a lot of family-oriented goals that are listed. Learning English, of course, and a lot of high school diploma, also high school diploma as a means to an end. So these are not atypical goals for adult learners, but you'll notice that you've named different goals depending on how well you know your learners and who the population is that you're teaching. So this is something that we, of course, want to be thinking about first and foremost when we are developing our curriculum. Or if we've got developed curriculum, how we're going to customize that curriculum to help learners get to those goals. In the 21st century, these goals are a little different. They're a little more challenging to achieve given the rigor of the 21st century. So with that in mind, and by the way, just so you know, I'll be sending everyone copies of all the information that you've typed. So, you know, Tammy will get to see what Christy wrote, and Patrick will see what Donna wrote. You'll all see what you've written here and throughout the webinar, or virtual class, as I like to call it. Let's take a look at something else to consider. Okay, we know the goals, and I think you proved that you know the goals, but what are the skills that your learners are going to need to meet those goals? And I'm going to put 60 seconds on the clock for this one. So go ahead and type away. If you'd like. We'll keep this open for a little while, but let's take a look at some of the skills that were listed, especially because some of us might not be on the computer, might be following on the phone. It'd be good to name a few of those. I was very interested to see that we had some, like Matt's put up here, critical thinking and problem solving, and I think there was also metacognition down here as well. Matt put metacognition, but I think maybe one as well. We've got the self-confidence. Certainly, that's an important skill that they're going to need to develop. A lot of basic skills, reading skills, writing skills are mentioned. Then we have the more career-based, industry-specific skills. Chris mentioned conversational skills, the social language. We also need academic discourse. Tara put in really an important underlying skill across all contexts, which is becoming a lifelong learner, which we know is a 21st century reality. Math skills came up numerous times. Beverly mentioned following instructions, which has both academic and workplace application. Again, the confidence coming up. Amy mentioned confidence. I've seen it a couple of times. Deborah's mentioning the cultural understanding aspect. Certainly, cross-cultural awareness is going to be huge for learners, again, academically, community, and workplace. I think it was Matt. I like, Flavia, people skills, but I know it's people skills. And Victoria mentioning vocabulary. Vocabulary is huge for learners, and being able to know the strategies to learn vocabulary. Please don't feel bad if I'm not mentioning your name. I feel a little bit like Miss Marian Romperroom, but I'm trying to give you a chance to see what people have written, but also to comment on things that you know. Marianne putting the idea of being able to structure their writing, putting sentences together, being more precise in writing is very, very important for learners, especially in today's language. And Laura, John, and Rosa immediately came, you know, they cut it right down to the essence of 21st century skills, including digital and being able to use technology. We know that problem solving in technology-rich environments, that's the phrase that comes out of the recent HIAC report, that's something that native speakers and non-native speakers alike are struggling with. So we've got a great list of skills here. And of course, there's only so much time in the lesson, right? So how do we manage to integrate our instruction and this level of skill work? And the answer is rigor. And I noticed that, Neil, I don't want to neglect your life skills. That's something that, while it's not, it doesn't underpin the college and career readiness skills, we acknowledge that without financial literacy, health literacy, that learners are not going to be able to work on any of their other skills. I mean, we have to hit Maslow's basic needs. So if we know that learners have goals that are challenging, and we know that learning the skills to achieve these goals has an element of challenge, what do we know about rigor and struggle and success and how they work together? Relax for the mini lecture portion of our virtual classroom. The definition, according to the Glossary of Educational Reform, is that academic rigor challenges students to meet high standards and high expectations while providing the support necessary for success. So you may want to hearken back to that true-false question about the ideas of scaffolds and supports, whether they're part of rigor. I find this quote to be really helpful when I'm thinking about whether what I'm doing is rigorous and intellectually robust enough for the learners. This is by Paul Zeitz out of the University of San Francisco. An exercise is a question that you know how to resolve immediately. So think about for a minute how many of our materials involve a lot of exercises. Whether you get it right or not depends upon how expertly you apply specific techniques, but you don't need to puzzle out what techniques to use. In contrast, a problem demands much thought and resourcefulness before the right approach is found. So you can have a rigorous exercise, but a problem by its nature is rigorous. Again, one of the things that we know and that you've mentioned in talking about the goals and why I asked you certain questions earlier is that the 21st century students face a complex and rapidly changing work environment. It's not enough to learn X. You have to continue learning beyond X and to keep revisiting your learning. So they have to have a high level of content knowledge and skills, but they also have to keep open to learning more and more as things change in technology communication, and that allows them to do problem solving. And this is out of 2007, so we're talking about 10 years ago. This was something that we were very aware of. For those of us that are working with English language learners, sometimes all the discussion of academic rigor or high-level workplace rigor is a little off-putting because we're looking at learners who right now are focused on getting basic language skills. And I want to point out that Betsy Parrish, who's the author of a module on rigor for ESL called Meeting puts forth that rigor is part of everyday literacy tasks. I mean, if we think about what we have to do in our everyday lives, how rigorous that is, reading selectively, listening and taking notes, helping children with homework, which some of you put down as a goal for your attending neighborhood meetings, making your way through a neighborhood meeting is really something. Interacting with teachers at school conferences or making healthcare decisions. I mean, let's just take that last one and think about the rigor inherent in that. So we can identify what rigor is. We can identify that it definitely exists in 21st century workplaces, academic settings, and everyday lives. But what do we know about how to handle that struggle to persist through a rigorous situation? What I think we need to look at is Carol Dweck's growth mindset. And the growth mindset, can you just give me a little green check? You go under the man whose hand is up at your communication menu and give me a green check if you've heard of growth mindset. Okay, good. Thank you, Victoria. I was looking for the green check. Okay, so we can see that several of you have heard of growth mindset. So for you, this is going to be repetition, but for those of you who have not, the concept of the growth mindset is actually opposed to the fixed mindset. A growth mindset means that you believe you can continue to learn even after you fail. A fixed mindset tends to believe once I fail, especially if I fail consistently, once I've failed, I've reached the maximum of my intelligence, the pinnacle, and I can go no further. So growth mindset gives a whole new life to learners who may have felt a fixed mindset previously. It's a commitment to learning, which is persistence, and it's allowing learners to take informed risks, learning from the results, whether they succeed or they fail. And one of the things that you can do with learners to help them understand the difference between fixed and growth mindset is to help them change their language. So, you know, I'll never be as smart as she is, changes into I'll figure out what she does and try it. Or this is too hard, changes into this is going to take some time and effort. I really like this because I think a lot of times we end up thinking things are too hard. Instead of asking yourself or saying, I just don't understand, ask yourself, what am I missing? I make too many mistakes. Oh, sorry, let's go back. I'm just not good at whatever. I'm going to train my brain. And I make too many mistakes turns into mistakes help me progress. Okay, that's a little bit goody two-shoes, but just the concept of being able to say, mistakes are a good thing. Mistakes help me. Oh, thank you, Christy. I'm sorry I missed that. I appreciate that you tried to set the check. Another way to ensure that learners get the message of growth mindset is to ask different kinds of questions. Most of the time, most materials ask convergent questions. Those are questions that have a right answer. When you ask questions that have a right answer, what is the learner going to believe? But if he or she doesn't get the right answer, they're out of it. It's just not possible for them to continue because they don't see any progress. They keep getting the wrong answer. But if you ask divergent questions that are open-ended and there are many possibilities of answers, especially if we ask the learner to defend their answer, then we start building that confidence that then could lead to more of a growth mindset. So before you ask a question, think to yourself, does it draw out and work with their learners' prior knowledge? Does it raise the visibility of the key concepts the students are learning? Will it stimulate peer discussion? And is it clear what the question is about? So no matter whether we ask a closed or an open question, we need to be thinking about these things with our questions because they're so valuable in the classroom. And if you're interested, CalPro does a wonderful series of workshops on questioning strategy. just revisit these questions, shall we, with my wonderful animation that I forgot about. Now, Jo Boaler is someone who, if you haven't seen her TED Talk, I highly recommend it. She talks about the idea of the math brain and the fact that that's a fallacy. And one of the reasons that she talks about this is that the idea that we can make mistakes and struggle and face challenges because challenges to the brain result in neurological growth. She has the evidence to support this. So she says that no one is born with a math brain, and it takes a given number of mistakes and struggling to achieve knowledge. And so the research that she uses is Jason Moser's research. And he's found that when we make a mistake, sorry guys, a big airplane going over. When we make a mistake, synapses fire and electrical signals move within the brain signifying learning. And what's very exciting about this to me is that the learning seems to be happening whether we pay conscious attention to the error or not. So there's been a lot of discussion of this in brain-mind education. But probably the best aspect of this is that we can share this information with learners. And we can share it at a fairly rudimentary level, but letting them know that every time they make a mistake, their brain is growing, which is very growth mindset. How do we get to this place? How do we get to this idea of rigor even being important? We know that it's a very rigorous world out there, but how do we get to the place of recognizing that we have to bring it into the classroom? And that has to do with the instructional shifts in 21st century adult education. So as we go through this, if you would, because it's a lot of listening, if you would just think to yourself, what do you already know about the shifts? And every time I say something you already know, you could just say to yourself, I know that. And anytime you hear something new or interesting, you could say, oh, that's new, that's interesting. Or I disagree with that, that's another option. But do try it, because I know it's a lot of listening, and if you're not organizing your sock drawers right now, it's hard to stay focused. I think the first thing to be aware of with the shifts in adult education is that we are looking at integrating the content areas. The silos that we've been living in for all these many years are coming down. And we're aware that learners have to progress more quickly through a program, so we need to integrate language learning, CTE, academic skills. All of this needs to come together. And programs are looking at how to do that. We're looking at how we integrate content, science, and math, and civics alongside of language development and career technical education. We're also looking at integration of transition skills at all levels. Used to be, especially in the world of English language learners, that you didn't really start working on high-end transition skills until a high, intermediate, or advanced level. That's not going to cut it. We have to start teaching the rudiments of academic reading, academic writing, academic discourse, and we can do it at a beginning level as long as it's scaffolded and supported. We also know now that we need intentional instruction to help learners use language that demonstrates their higher order thinking and problem-solving skills. This is very important in the workplace. The workplace is demanding that they get employees that have higher order thinking and problem-solving skills. And so we need to be able to show that our learners have these skills, but they need to be able to demonstrate it verbally or in writing. Oops, I clicked the wrong arrow. The other aspect, so we're going high, but we're also going deep. The idea that we are de-emphasizing rote memory and surface level understanding. It's no longer a struggle to get information, to get knowledge. What is the struggle is what you do with it. How do you analyze it? How do you make use of it? So it's not that we're not giving students formulas and facts, but we want them to make use of those formulas and facts. And then we want to help them do close reading so they can pull information out, but they can also synthesize, infer, do all the chewy, juicy intellectual tasks that are necessary for them to be able to be effective workers, effective parents, effective community members, effective learners. And you probably are familiar with this concept. I'm hoping that my voice is okay. Could I just get a little Y in the chat pod if you can hear me okay? Oh, great. I've been trying to stay very close to the mic. I tend to move my hands around a lot. Those of you that have been in adult ed for a while, you know that the sequential relationship has been the way that we've been running it for a long time. So English language proficiency generally is life skills as the content, moving into more academic content or workplace content. Now we're moving from a sequential to a parallel relationship. So we're really, in order for that to happen, learners have to develop skills earlier. We have to start working with them. Okay, Laura, I will try to make it not present anymore. Laura, John. And one of the ways we can do that is by prioritizing content-rich informational text. Those of you that are familiar with the College of Readiness standards, this is not something that would be new to you. And emphasizing academic language. We're going to look at all of this really closely on Monday the 5th. We're going to look at it in action, in rigorous tasks. But in order to get learners to the task, we have to teach language explicitly. We have to encourage the production of academic language. We have to choose text with rich academic language to work with. And my favorite, something I wish that we had more of nowadays, is a focus on textual evidence. So if someone in your class is making a claim, we want them to be able to point to the place in the text that supports the claim. Or talk about the place in the video. Or mention the person who they heard speaking. The idea of using text, oral, visual, media, print, it's all text, but using that to support claims and conclusions. And here it is, the blue book, signaling an upward shift in knowledge, skills, and abilities that students must develop. This is the CCRS, College of Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education. They came out in 2013, officially I think 2014, and they have been a part of a lot of programs, revision of curriculum. It's really a great set of standards to look at. If you don't know it, at the end of this session, there's a link for you to view a webinar if you'd like, or to view an extract to read more about it. Oops, sorry. So in addition to increasing the demands, we're increasing the language demands across content areas and specific language and analytical practices that students need to perform. That's all part of the standard. And then for those of you that are teaching English as a second language, this is the English language proficiency standards that support language learners achieving the College of Career Readiness standards. And again, if you're not familiar with this, there is a link to the extract and the webinar on this as well. So you've made it through the mini lecture where we talked about rigor, struggle, and success, where we talked about the shifts in instruction that led to our focus on rigor, and the two documents that are used to help support curriculum that increases rigor in adult instruction. Would you take 1 minute and in the regular chat pod, not this one, in the chat pod where Laura has just written that the sound is coming in and out, and tell me one takeaway you have from this lecture. One thing you're taking away from this lecture. 60 seconds. job, everybody. Thank you. I'm so appreciative that you have takeaways. This is a great thing. I think Donna's comment that this had another name in the 80s, I think it's very important for those of us with long memories to recognize, certainly there is an adjustment here, but recognize that this is not a complete reinvention of what we've been doing. And for those of you with elementary school backgrounds, you certainly know that you've seen this happening in K-12. And Amy, you just answered one of the true-false questions. The next task that I have for you is for you to talk to me and the rest of the group about what you're already doing. Because as I mentioned, yes, Donna, what I mentioned just a moment ago is that rigor isn't throwing out what you've been doing. It's looking at what you're doing and seeing, is it at a rigorous level and can it be tweaked? And there are certainly ways to tweak, but also recognizing what you're already doing with rigor. So we have 4 boxes here. One about topics, another about questions, Juan's already typing, text complexity, and tasks. What I'd like you to do, I'm going to give you 4 minutes for this, a full 4 minutes. And I'd like you to spend approximately a minute in each box, more or less, maybe 30 seconds, telling me your response to these questions. What's a topic that's challenging and high interest that you're already teaching? What's a question that you ask in class that prompts thoughtful responses from your learners? What's one tool or technique you use to help learners navigate complex text? And what's one learning task that typically results in learners having an aha moment? So you guys are so ready to type and not to listen anymore. I will stop. I'm going to play the music. This music will go for 3 minutes, and I'll check and see if we need another minute or so. Any questions for me before we begin? Or as we're supposed to ask, what questions do you have? All right, I think you're typing them up anyway. See you in 3 minutes. Readiness, would you let me know if you need, oh, thank you, Victoria, for letting me know. Be sure that you complete the evaluation when it gets mailed to you. Would anybody like another minute? Give me a green check if you'd like a little more time. Okay. How about another 50 seconds? Let's go with that. Oh, Chris, you go under the man with the little hand raised, and you hit the downward facing arrow, and there should be a green check there. But I'll know that you wanted a green check, so that's good. Okay, so Myra and Amy want more time. I get it. Neela will cover that in the next layout. We're going to cover it in about 3 minutes. Thanks, Brett. Okay, that was about 50. If you have something else you want to type in while I'm speaking, feel free. I just wanted to, we have so many wonderful ideas in here, and it's a little challenging because I don't want to pick out an idea and then have someone else think, well, I said that too. So I'm just going to just go through some ideas at the top and let you know that everyone will have an opportunity to look at everyone's ideas. I'll send out an email. It's Monday. I'll probably send it out on Wednesday. But I think by that time we'll have the material to send to you. And we'll finish up today with information about what we're doing on Monday. But let's just take a minute or two to talk about this task. Thanks, Deborah, for helping with that. So this task gave you an opportunity, and doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at this and not know that you have a plethora of rigorous activities, tasks, topics, questions, ways to deal with text complexity. You're at no loss when it comes to that. What I think we might want to be thinking about is maybe some refinement of the concepts. So right now, for example, Amy has work preparation and soft skills as a topic that is challenging for learners and high interest. I also noticed that there was a topic of close reading being high interest. What I want to talk about is the difference between the topic of work preparation versus the skill of close reading. Because close reading is something we want to hit multiple times. So as a skill, it's high interest and challenging for learners, definitely. But I think we would want to do close reading in relationship to work preparation reading or soft skill reading. So it's when we're talking about topics, and I'm just working on this from a vocabulary standpoint, is that we're really talking about thematic language or context with the topic. And that becomes very important for the learner, because that becomes a way for the learner to create a mnemonic connection with what it is he or she is learning, and also to get the relevance. Let's look over at some of the questions that came up. Victoria asked, how do you see the same information? I think that divergent meaning you're looking at two different points of view with the same information. The idea of WH questions, depending on whether it's what, where, when, which are more factual and detail-oriented, versus why questions and how do you know questions, which would really create a lot of thought and critical thinking. Flavia gives a great example of a prompt. Give me an example, which would immediately have learners have to go back into the higher levels of thinking with application and possibly even analysis and evaluation. looking at complex text. Let's go up to the top here. Okay, Victoria, we've already commented on Victoria. Let's do Deborah. The idea of assigning sections to small groups to analyze and then sharing with the class. This is key to Rigor because Rigor is the whole process of working with complex text is so challenging for learners. So if we can break it down into smaller chunks, they're still attacking the whole text, but they're collaborating very workplace, and they're learning academic discourse as they discuss the text that they're working on, and they still have a lot of other standards that they would be meeting in terms of presenting to each other, and obviously the work it takes to analyze the text. So Juan also mentions group work. I see a number of you, as I was watching, talked about group work. Scaffolding, Beverly, is a great term, and it's what you want to do, but the what of the scaffolding, the how of the scaffolding is what we want to look at on March 5th. And going to tasks, I'll start at the bottom. Chris talks about explaining word families and how one word has many forms that are different parts of speech. As a task, I would want the learners to participate in that. So if they were to come together and analyze a word family or come up with a word family through their research, that would be a task. Otherwise, explaining word families and how one word has many forms would be my teacher role in presenting and maybe modeling. Reading fiction and having to figure out why characters did something or why the story ended the way it did, that's a great task if the learners are doing it. If the task is teacher-led and not student-directed, it's not going to give you as much bang for the buck with the rigor. Obviously, we want to lead learners through with text complexity or questions. We want to lead them through the process, but eventually we want to get them to the task. Because if they're doing the task, then we're sure they're getting the rigor. So that was a really brief report back on that. You'll get a chance to look at that much more thoroughly when it comes to you by email. Let's take a look and see if we made it through our 4 objectives. We did connect in real time. Thank you very much. You did a fabulous job. We identified our contexts and some of our needs through the polls and through the chat with the questions about the students' goals and the skills they need. We launched an exploration of rigorous instruction for sure, and we previewed the agenda and materials. Well, we're doing that right now, so let me tell you what we're going to do with that. We've laid the groundwork today. We've had a face-to-face session. We're going to have a face-to-face session on March 5th, a week from today, and then there will be a follow-up webinar where all the people in California who have participated in this training will come together to talk about what they've done with rigor. This is our agenda. We're going to, you'll notice the verbs, experience, correlate, identify, observe, make it rationale for rigor clear for your learners, and integrate. It's going to be a very active session, so please bring open minds and a lot of energy. We'll supply the caffeine. Great, Christy. And this is an answer to Neela's question about what to look at before March 5th. If you're not familiar with the CCRS, you're not familiar with the English Language Proficiency Standards or the CCRS documents, please download the handouts that you see in the handout pod and also the web links that you see below. You'll have time to do that. Bring with you a lesson or a practice task that you'll be teaching this month or next. A device, because we will be using technology, a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone, and as I mentioned, an open and inquiring mind. And I think that Mary Louise wants to make a comment about all of you. So thank you so much for your time and your enthusiastic engagement. Oh, administrators, please ask a teacher, or you can work with a teacher at the site during the session. Thank you, Martina.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, participants from the Inland Empire area. I can't emphasize enough Jamie's first bullet under what to bring, a lesson or practice task, because that's where you'll be pulling it all together that day. And Here is our location at the Riverside County Office of Education. We will be sending parking passes to you. Those will be sent to you by email. So look out for that coming this week as well. It will indicate where to park and what you need to put on your dashboard. And notice that a light breakfast and lunch will be provided as well. And will go from a prompt start at 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. But you can arrive for coffee and the light breakfast at 8:30 in the morning. We look forward to seeing you. Have a great afternoon. Thank you all very much, and be aware that as soon as we close the webinar, the link to the evaluation will appear. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.